As the fighting with Iran ramps up, a gallon of regular gas is once again $4 on average, and that's up 13 cents in just 1 week. The U.S. and Israel's war with Iran plunged the world into a global energy crisis as the cost of crude oil soared due to supply chain and production disruptions, across the Middle East. Prices also cooled last month when Washington and Tehran reached an interim agreement, but that peace deal has now crumbled and oil flows are stalling again. So with oil and gas prices up and the ongoing stalemate in the Strait of Hormuz, let's bring in Severin Borenstein. He's a professor at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business and the faculty director of the Energy Institute at Haas. Thanks for joining us. Is there a ceiling for how high oil and gas prices can go?
Well, practically there is a ceiling. That is that as prices go up, two things happen. One is that the demand will start to decline, and the other is that we will pull more and more oil out of reserves. We've seen both happen since the war began, and it's the reason we didn't see prices go to $150 or $200 a barrel, as some people predicted at the beginning of the war. I think that that will continue to be true for at least a while. Of course, the reserves are not endless, and if the war goes on for a long time, and particularly if the reduction in supply out of the Middle East grows, we could start to see a tighter and tighter market. Eventually, if the war goes on for a very long time, we could start to see much higher prices of crude oil.
Oil producers now talking about pipeline projects to actually bypass the Strait of Hormuz. Are pipelines a viable option?
They are a viable option in the longer run, but not in the short run. It would take years to produce those pipelines, and I think we are going to see pipelines in many directions out of the Middle East in order to avoid these sorts of risks in the future. But as we're seeing today, in fact, Saudi Arabia's pipeline, which takes oil across to the Red Sea, may not be that effective because now there's the possibility that there's going to be conflict in the Red Sea as the Houthis get involved in the war. So any route out of the Middle East, because of the inherent volatility of that area, has risks associated with it.
As we have this up and down of what's happening with the war, are we going to see that again with our prices, with the gasoline as well at the pump?
Yeah, I think we are. And two things actually are going on. One is the one that's getting all the attention, which is crude oil prices are going up. But the other is we're also seeing a real pinch in the refining industry. There are some refineries behind the Strait of Hormuz that are major exporters of gasoline and diesel and jet fuel, and they've been unable to get their refined product out. And so not only have we seen the increase in crude oil prices driving up gasoline prices, but we're also seeing a pinch in the refining sector, which means that the margin above the normal margin above crude oil prices has also gone up. Both of those are going to continue to be issues as long as we see the Strait of Hormuz closed, and that's not something that can be remedied quickly through alternative routes out of the Middle East.
How close are we inching to a crisis?
Well, a crisis is in the mind of the beholder. For many people, we're already in a crisis. They're seeing their gasoline prices go up, and people, lower income people who commute a long ways, are having a real problem with that. I think other parts of the world are already very much in crisis. Lower income countries that are getting hit by these higher crude oil and refined product prices are really having a problem. Europe is much more dependent on crude oil out of the Middle East, and they have seen a much bigger hit to their gasoline prices. So I think that every extra $10 per barrel raises the price of gasoline another 25 cents a gallon or so, and makes it harder for people to afford to drive.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insight, Severin Borenstein. Appreciate it.
Thank you.